Welcome, Self-Authored, everybody, and thank you for joining me again this week as I continue to work through the idea of personal identity. If you haven't seen some of my previous videos on this, basically I'm coming to the idea that in answer to the question of who am I, it seems to be paramount to having a happy and successful life that as an individual we develop a cohesive and positive identity of ourselves here in the world. And so this week, in trying to work through that, I'm taking on the questions of race and culture. And as you can see, in light of that, I got myself a world map that I'm pretty happy about as the backdrop. Either way, in working through that, I seem to think the idea of race is an interesting one. It's one that generally biologically, and as our previous video kind of talked about, race doesn't seem to have much value on the biological level other than maybe phenotypically you're a little darker than others or lighter than others, and maybe some people have sickle cell or not, But for the most part, doesn't separate you from others physically enough that you're all still human. So with race, it seems to be more an issue of the history that comes with it. And both in race and culture, what I want to address is the idea that you're born into a conversation. So the interpretations, the views, and the conversations around race and culture are not your own, at least not initially. Similar to how I talked about with free will, you're born into this world that basically has all these laid out for you and defined for you. It's not to say that's what they are, but it's basically they're given to you and you're born into them and you're pretty much raised with them. Let's start with race. With race, as we said already, you're born into this history of it. And it seems to be you're brought forth with mainly what your parents have given you and what that means, as well as some of what your friends and your surrounding community has given for you. But it doesn't seem to have to be the end-all result. I mean, if you look at the history, it seems to be this idea that, we can look at any span of history, and it depends on how far or how short in history you want to look, and you can always find an instance where your particular people, if you want to say that, because if you think about it, you're born into a world and you don't really have a people other than your family. Everything that's put on top of that historically has been brought forth as your lineage, but it doesn't actually affect you in the present, out more so than you choose to have it do so. It seems to be like this idea that you can look back and you can find all the ills done against your people, as well as you can find all the good things you've done against people. And you can also find times where you people have done quite a bit of ill as well, And so what I'm saying is, either way, however you chop it up, you got to make peace with your history. Your history has to be both forgiven and integrated, because a complete rejection of it is a rejection of how you got to where you're at. It's a rejection of your parents and how everything that's brought them to be the people they have gotten to be, as well as everything they've tried to pass on to you to make you the person you are. And there's nothing wrong with being upset about the way things did maybe not have worked out, or you don't like the way things have been interpreted. But what I want to caution against is there's no need to there's no need to run around pointing out the sins of the father. It does no good for you, because essentially all you're doing is attacking everybody around you and creating enemies. And it does no good for other people, because you don't give them a space to act any other way in front of you. You don't give them an opportunity to be a supportive influence in your life, or maybe to be a comrade or a friend in that nature. And so the idea is that best way to do it is maybe come up with a new way of interpreting your past. And it's not even your past. I guess it could operate the same. It seems to operate the same way as childhood trauma, but how to incorporate your lineage, how to incorporate the parts of it that you value, and how to right the parts that were wrong. And it doesn't mean making enemies. I think that's the last thing you should do. There's already going to be enough pointing against you in this idea anyway. There's enough obstacles in the world. There's no need to create new obstacles by making enemies of those around you because of, like I said, the sins of the father and those who have come before them. Give them a space to act and create themselves fresh as well. So similarly, as I said with the gender argument and the gender expression, don't make enemies of the way you choose to interpret yourself culturally and historically. Like I said, there's enough going on out there. The best thing you can do is, how can you create an identity of yourself, it seems, that gives pride in where you've come from. And the sense of being pride for where you come from is it's pride in you, because you're You're a manifestation of it. And so if you want to sit there and hate on it, it doesn't make sense to have guilt about your past, nor to have resentment about it. Because either way, that's in some manner, you're putting that on yourself. And so you're always either trying to redeem yourself about some guilt or resentment about it, or if you're mad at it, at the way things gone, both historically for the way you imagine your people or anything else, essentially what you're doing is you're then instantly judging everybody that you throw into that category. And it doesn't work. You might as well find a way that you can powerfully own that and create friends with the other people in the world such that you can actually tackle the real problems. And then when it comes to culture, culture is a fun one. Because culture and religion are going to fall on a very similar track. And it's the same, I want to throw you the same idea as I feel it is with your race. No, that word's whatever. I don't think there are any different races. But nonetheless, for the sake of the argument, the idea of your culture and your religion, they seem to be a good way to look at it without getting upset about them, because it seems like we grow up and then at some point you get upset with your culture, either whether it's the broad culture of the nation you're living in, or in this case America, or if it's the culture of your religion or if it's culture whatever. Same idea. There seems to be a rejection of it at some point, and you go, well, I don't like this. It's the same. It's the argument most atheists make, and most people who are kind of going against the way things are. And there's a lot of things to go against, but basically hating what a symbol of your culture stands for. And the same idea, it doesn't do any good because you're a product of it. And just saying you want to get rid of all of it is essentially, it made you. And I don't believe you can simply get rid of it without some sort of damage brought back to yourself. What I feel needs to be done, if you look at it this way, here's the way I'm thinking about it. Your culture seems to be this idea of like a out of the box, turnkey, batteries included, no construction necessary, instructions included way to go about your life. It's a product of your parents coming together, your community coming together, your broader society coming together on multiple levels. And it's everybody's best bet of, here's what we got to offer you on how to function in the world. I hope you don't screw it up. I hope it supports you, and I hope you can build upon it. Because, I think the funniest thing is Joe Rogan has the joke that at some point you grow up and you realize you're an adult and you know just as little as everybody else. So what I'm making an argument for is instead of trying to destroy your culture or get rid of it or just exile yourself from it and get mad at everybody who participates in it, I think the better bet would be to take what's working for it and just expand that. I don't feel like there's any positive result that can come from just being angry and pointing out that doesn't work. I hate that. You're not creating anything new for yourself except more anxiety and more enemies. The best thing I think we can do is look at the parts of our culture and our upbringing and if you're born into religion, the aspects you do like about it, if you still choose to participate in it, as well as those of your history as well, and find out the parts that are going to work for you and the parts that really create something positive in your life such that it's beneficial in the way you choose to act in the world. And I'm saying take that and expand that in the world. And in fact, if you do it right, maybe you can help add back to your culture and back to your history and build upon that in a more positive manner such that it gets everyone to come together. So use your culture, your history, your religion, your background as a means to create an identity for yourself that brings those around you together and doesn't create more enemies. So expand upon your family in the world instead of try to create more enemies in the world. And I that's best as I can come up with on how we can do that for personal identity. It seems the only way to, it's not a very, it's a huge part of the way you are, I feel. But I feel it's all the same for everybody in the sense that what you do with it is the same process. It's integrating that into knowing where you came from, understanding it, forgiving it, integrating it, finding out what works with it, and then moving forward into the future with a commitment of what you want to create for yourself in that instead of anything else. Just focus on what you want to make of it. And so that's where I'm going to stop for this week's video. I think it's a pretty straightforward one, though in practice, probably not the easiest one because it is a massive part of our lives, especially a massive part in the way people perceive us. So join me next week as I continue on this idea of personal identity and what else may be on that. And I hope to see you guys soon. Check out my video. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram at self-authored, as well as you guys can check out some of my previous videos I've done before. And until next time, I'll catch you guys next week.